Welcome to Spellbook Studies, the Reliquary Towers series where we overanalyze magic cards and frankly do it for far too long. Today, we won't be talking about any creature, any spell, any planeswalker from any distant land. Instead, I would like to invite you to cross over to a place of inconsistency. A place with no apparent turn order. A place beyond the concept of time. That place, Magosi the Waterveil. Today we're going to be looking at Magosi the Waterveil from the perspective of Commander, on the casual side of its spectrum rather than the competitive. Magosi the Waterveil is a land printed in original Zendikar that enters the battlefield tapped. It can produce blue mana. You can pay a blue mana and tap it to put an Eon counter on it and pay the whopping price of skipping your next turn. But then you can remove an Eon counter from it and return it to your hand and then take an extra turn after this one and create a process of essentially storing a turn for later use. Now, if you're anything like me, your first reaction to this card would probably, why would I ever play this? This is terrible. Skipping a turn is just way too much a cost to pay. And frankly, fair. Yeah, just fair. It is a very high cost to pay. Skipping a turn is the equivalent of jumping out a window, just for fun. Just because you can, because who wouldn't want to jump out a window? Now, because of that big cost to Magosi the Waterveil, you need a big reason to play it and an even bigger reason to activate that ability. And frankly, to put it very bluntly, that reason is winning the game. By sacrificing an early turn, like turn 3 or 4, you are effectively able to sacrifice a draw step and most likely playing a ramp spell in order to take an extra turn around turn 8 or 9, where you're able to then make a massive swing or cast a massive spell that's able to close out the game for you. That is what Magosi the Waterveil can generally do for you at its best. And when judging the playability of any card, it's also good to look at what it can do at its worst. Magosi the Waterveil at its worst is a land that comes in tapped and adds blue mana. You don't necessarily need to activate the ability, and there are many times where you won't be able to. Sometimes maybe a goblin will be looking to pelt you with rocks to death, or you'll get absolutely eviscerated by a brushwag, or perhaps you'll even get ganked by this ugly thing. With that in mind, if you're already using tapped lands for fixing, you can include Magosi the Waterveil in the same sense, except instead of giving you fixing, it's giving you a different utility function. Thinking about Magosi the Waterveil this way means that we can relatively compare it to running Tron lands in an artifact deck. Because CEDH is a singleton format, assembling Tron with Urza's power plant, mine, and tower is extremely unlikely, just like as it might be unlikely that you ever activate Magosi the Waterveil's second or third ability. But because both lands can provide you with such a massive upside and such a mild downside, there's still a great reason to running them. Before we get into compatible archetypes where you might have more success running it in, there is one question that I would still like to answer because it's one of the first things that we thought of when looking at this card, and it is, can you cheat the effects of Magosi the Waterveil, specifically the effect that you have to skip a turn and get rid of that massive downside? And unfortunately, that answer is no. Because Magosi the Waterveil includes putting the Aeon counter on the land and skipping your next turn in the same line of text, there is no time for you to interact with the ability between the time that you would have to skip your next turn and put the Aeon counter onto the land. With that in mind, there are some interactions that you can use to cheat this effect that we'll get into after we talk about compatible archetypes. At the Reliquary Tower, we have decided on 3 archetypes that we find are extremely compatible with Magosi the Waterveil. The first of which is instant speed or reactionary decks. Decks that are designed for you to hold up mana and wait for an opponent to do something in order to act or do something in response. In my experience, these decks generally follow the same play pattern. They like to hold up mana and wait for end steps to remove the most threatening thing on the board in order to protect themselves until they can have one turn where they have some massive action which results in them winning the game. Because of this play pattern, Magosi the Waterveil can be used to capitalize on unique opportunities. When it comes to the end of the turn before yours, if there is nothing on board either through alliances or coincidences that is not threatening you, then instead of using your mana to remove the closest thing to you, you can instead continue to hold up that removal and activate Magosi the Waterveil. By doing this, you effectively skip a single draw step. You are able to continue to hold up removal for your opponent's larger threats, and you bank an extra turn that you can use later on in the game in order to have that massive play that gets you through to the end. In addition, with this scenario, it also gives the chance for your opponents to remove your other opponent's threats, so you don't have to waste cards doing it yourself. Commanders for this archetype that you might want to include Magosi the Waterveil in include Baral, Chief of Compliance, and Krark the Thumbless and Sakashima of 1,000 Faces. The second archetype we'd suggest Magosi the Waterveil for is Landfall or Ramp Tribal decks. Decks designed to rocket you in front of your opponents and leave them in your dust. Because these decks are almost solely designed to get lands into play or extra mana, activating Magosi the Waterveil early has far less of a hindrance than if one of your opponents were to activate it. Losing a turn in these decks is so much less of a hindrance because on your previous and following turns, they are designed to have so much mana that you will be doing an extra 2 or 3 things more than your opponents anyway. So skipping a turn more puts your deck on par with theirs instead of putting you behind them. Since a lot of these decks also use finishing moves, including large creatures or large swarms of them, having an extra turn later in the game once your board state is established is extremely crucial because it gives you the extra time to swing out and kill all of your opponents at once instead of using one combat step to knock out one of them and having the others work together to set you back to the Stone Age. Commanders from this archetype that you might want to include Magosi of the Waterveil in include Omnath, Locus of Creation, Omnath, Locus of the Royal, and Tatiova, Benthic Druid. The final archetype we'd suggest Magosi the Waterveil for is, in all honesty, kind of cheating, because our reasoning for including it in this archetype is almost identical to the instant speed or reactionary decks. This final archetype is combo decks. They tend to seem to have a similar play pattern where you're trying to build to a turn where you can combo off and finish the game and essentially win in a split second. And they also follow the same philosophies of holding up removal and making sure that your opponents can't sweep the rug out from under you while you're trying to prepare your combo. Because of this, Magosi of the Waterveil can be used in a similar fashion to instant speed or reactionary decks. However, I felt it important that we include this as a separate category because I know that there are a lot of people who feel very differently about instant speed matters decks versus combo decks. Moving past good archetypes from Magosi the Waterveil, we're now going to talk about specific cards that work well in tandem with Magosi the Waterveil. The first 3 cards that work well with Magosi the Waterveil are Lithoform Engine, Rings of Brighthearth, and Rowan Kenrith from Battle Bond. These 3 cards all share the ability to duplicate activated abilities of permanence, meaning with Magosi the Waterveil, you could duplicate its 3rd ability in order to get another extra turn. Interestingly enough, even though Strionic Resonator is a very similar card, it will not work to the same capacity because it can only copy triggered abilities. The final card that I am mentioning that pairs very well with Magosi the Waterveil is unique in being mentioned separately because it does not exactly synergize well on its own. However, it does lead to a convoluted infinite turns combo. So if you like really janky interactions that combo into oblivion, then this one will be right for you. The card in question is Nesting Grounds. It's a colorless land that taps for colorless and has the ability to pay 1 colorless mana and tap it and move a counter from target permanent you control onto another target permanent, and you can only activate that ability as a sorcery. In order to achieve this infinite turn combo, you will still need to skip 1 turn in order to get the Eon counter onto Magosi the Waterveil. However, we're going to say exchanging 1 turn for infinite is probably a willing price to pay. In order to complete this combo, in addition to Nesting Grounds and Magosi the Waterveil, you'll also need Amulet of Vigor or something similar, as well as something that proliferates. We would suggest Evolution Sage since it is the way to complete this combo with the least amount of mana. Now that we know the pieces, this is how the combo actually functions. You have Magosi the Waterveil in play already with an Aeon counter on it. You have Evolution Sage and Amulet of Vigor in play as well. When you play Nesting Grounds as your land for turn, you will proliferate the Aeon counters on Magosi the Waterveil with Evolution Sage. You can then use Nesting Grounds to move one of the counters onto, let's say, itself. Once you have one counter on Nesting Grounds and one counter on Magosi the Waterveil, you can take your extra turn with Magosi and return it to your hand. On your extra turn, you will play Magosi the Waterveil as your land for turn. It will enter the battlefield untapped because of Amulet of Vigor. It will also proliferate the counters now on Nesting Grounds with Evolution Sage up to 2. So you can move one of those counters back onto Magosi the Waterveil and take another extra turn and continue this process. This is not a terrific combo. Yes, it does result in a complete lockout of the game. However, it has 4 moving pieces, so it is extremely vulnerable to removal, not to mention because you have to continuously replay Magosi of the Waterveil, you need to have an exploration type effect in order to net mana or already have enough mana to win the game. There's also the huge drawback that you're probably going to be playing at a casual table with this land. And I don't imagine the other casual players will be too hyped when they see you try and take infinite turns at the table. But hey, if your playgroup is into this sort of thing and would love to see this piece come together, then go ahead and use it. To end the video, we're going to put Magosi the Waterveil in perspective by looking at some other cards that allow us to take extra turns. Some other extra turn spells you might see include Beacon of Tomorrow, Expropriate, Karn's Temporal Sundering, Temporal Trespass, and Nexus of Fate. Looking at these other extra turn spells, we can see that they're going to cost you on average 6 or more mana. And in its own way, that is skipping a turn. You're rarely going to be able to play these cards and also have a follow-up play that will gratefully impact the board. Overall, what these cards get you is an extra draw step and an extra combat step. And Magosi the Waterveil provides you with that as well. The only difference is that the turn you skip isn't 6, 7, or 8, it's 3 or 4. Not to mention, when looking at these spells, there's a real price tag to them too. A lot of extra turn spells are going to cost a lot of money. One of the biggest pulls for me for Magosi the Waterveil is that it's only around 50 cents. The next time you order cards, you could easily just add this on to the end as an extra purpose that you could just try out for next to nothing. With that in mind, I hope you consider putting Magosi the Waterveil in your next deck. Thank you for listening today, and I hope you enjoyed. Please remember to like and subscribe to the channel.